I stood there, in a black dress that didn't quite fit anymore, staring at the mahogany coffin as it was lowered into the ground. The man inside it, my father, was the last anchor holding our fractured family together. And now, he is gone. People murmured condolences I barely registered. My hands were clenched tight around the program as the priest droned on. My sister Sandra stood just a few feet away, dabbing fake tears from dry eyes with an embroidered handkerchief. To anyone watching, she looked like the grieving golden child. But I knew better. Oh, I knew. See, my father wasn't perfect, but he was fair. Stern, old school, a man of discipline and principle. He didn't say I love you often, but he showed it, in how he taught me to change a tire, how he left me the key to the family business when he got sick, how he once whispered, "It's all yours one day, Clara." I've put it in writing. That was a year before the cancer took his voice, then his strength, and eventually his life. So when the funeral ended and Uncle Raymond, our father's brother and the executor of his estate, invited us to the old study for the reading of the will, I walked in feeling grief, but also a quiet, painful sense of closure. I thought I knew what was coming. I was wrong. The room smelled like old paper and pipe smoke. My father's leather armchair sat empty, casting a shadow on the wall behind it. Sandra sat straight-backed with a smugness I mistook for elegance. Uncle Raymond opened a thick envelope, cleared his throat, and began. To my daughter Sandra, I leave the family home, all its contents, and ownership of T&K Agricultural Services. I trust her to carry on the family name with grace. My heart dropped. I waited for my name. To Clara, my younger daughter, I leave a sum of $50,000 to support her endeavors as she sees fit. That was it. No mention of the farmland. No business, no legacy, just a check. Like a tip for good behavior. My ears buzzed, my throat clenched. I looked to Uncle Raymond, sure this was a mistake. But he just folded the papers, his eyes full of sympathy he didn't know how to express. And Sandra? She turned to me, lips curled slightly, and said, "Daddy always knew who was really capable." I didn't scream, I didn't cry, I just nodded and left. That night, I returned to the house one last time. My father's study, once off limits to both of us, was still unlocked from earlier. I sat in his chair, staring at the old grandfather clock ticking down my final minutes in this life I thought I knew. Then I remembered something. A year ago, Dad had shown me a document, handwritten, with a witness signature. It wasn't legally binding yet, he'd said, but it was his true intention. In it, he'd left the company to me. The land. The house. Sandra was supposed to get a separate apartment in the city, one she'd already accepted. I started searching. I opened every drawer, every book, every file cabinet, and there it was, behind a drawer panel. A manila envelope, sealed with wax. Inside, his original will. My name, my birthright, his signature. I held it in my hands like treasure. I ran to Uncle Raymond the next morning. He stared at the paper, brows furrowed, muttering, This wasn't the copy I was given." But before he could say more, Sandra stormed in. She snatched the document from his hands, read it, then calmly walked over to the fireplace and set it on fire. I screamed. "That wasn't legal," she said, her voice ice cold. "It was just a draft, and you're delusional if you think anyone's going to believe your version of things over mine." Raymond stood frozen, and I realized in that moment, no one would fight for me. Not against her. She had money, power, influence. A way of twisting people's minds until they saw what she wanted them to see. I left town that week with nothing but a suitcase, a bitter taste in my mouth, and a vow burning in my chest. Let her have it now. Let her revel in stolen glory. But one day I will take back what's mine, not with lies or fire, but with truth, patience, and law. 20 years is a long time to wait, but it gave me everything I needed: education, experience, and silence. Silence she mistook for defeat. I didn't tell anyone what she did. I let the story unfold the way she wanted. Me, the unstable sister. Her, the competent heir. But behind the curtain, I watched. I learned. I documented everything. And now, as I stand on the edge of reclaiming not just land or buildings, but a legacy, I wonder if she ever truly understood the storm she started the day she set that will on fire. But the funny thing about storms, they don't start loud. They start with a single crack in the sky and end with everything you thought was solid, gone. And Sandra? She never saw mine coming. Because when you wait 20 years in silence, you make sure the final blow is loud enough to shake generations. When you lose everything in a single day, you either crumble or you rebuild. The day Sandra burned our father's original will, I walked out of that house with nothing but a suitcase and a scar no one could see. It wasn't just money she stole, it was who I was supposed to become. But pain has a funny way of sharpening you. While Sandra stayed behind to bask in her stolen spotlight, I got on a bus with no destination. I picked the farthest town I could afford a ticket to, and arrived there broke, alone, and angry. At first, I worked in a diner, then a bookstore. I cleaned offices at night and read law textbooks during lunch breaks. My clothes were secondhand, but my dreams were tailored sharp. I wasn't just working jobs. I was building ammunition. You see, I didn't want revenge. I wanted justice with interest, and justice takes time. Over the next few years, I earned a degree in law. Not flashy, not Ivy League, but solid, real. I specialized in estate disputes, elder exploitation, and probate law. Fitting, right? I helped people like me, those silenced by legal loopholes and greedy relatives. Every client was a lesson, every courtroom a rehearsal. And through it all, I watched Sandra from the shadows, quietly, carefully. With the money from our father's business, she built an empire of illusions. Real estate, luxury cars, 2 lavish weddings, each one more theatrical than the last. To the outside world, she was a woman who'd built something from nothing. But I knew the truth. She'd built it from me. Then came her daughter, Emily. A wide-eyed little girl with her mother's beauty, but none of her poison, at least not yet. I watched her grow from afar through social media, society pages, alumni newsletters. And even from a distance, I saw it. Emily was soft-hearted, thoughtful, the kind of person who still thanked waiters and waved at dogs. She reminded me of me, before everything broke. Sandra, of course, twisted her too, sending her to elite schools, teaching her that money was love, that image was everything. But Emily's spirit was stubborn. You could see it in the way she painted, or protested causes her mother rolled her eyes at. And I began to wonder what would happen if she ever learned the truth. Meanwhile, I kept growing. By my 40s, I had a small but respected practice. I never put my name on the door. I preferred anonymity. Power is easier to wield when they don't see you coming. But I didn't forget. I never forgot. I purchased a parcel of land adjacent to our family's old property, quietly, under a shell company. I reviewed Sandra's business filings every year, tracking patterns, collecting contradictions. Her empire wasn't as solid as she made it look. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. I walked through the halls of the house I grew up in, every floorboard whispering memories. My father's study where the truth was once burned. My childhood room, still painted the color I picked at 11. I didn't come back to reclaim a house. I came to reclaim a story. And now, I could rewrite it. I didn't keep the money. I donated the business to the town, created scholarships in my father's name for girls from broken families. And the house, I gave it to Emily. She was innocent in all of this. And in the end, she stood by the truth. I told her, let this place be filled with laughter again. Real laughter, not the kind that covers lies. She cried when I handed her the keys, not because of what she gained, but because of what we'd both survived. Sandra died 3 weeks later. No grand funeral, no legacy she controlled. Just silence. Fitting for a woman who spent her life silencing others. And me? I still walk by that old field sometimes where our father once taught us how to plant tomatoes. The land feels different now. Not because it's mine again, but because the truth finally lives here. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks or headlines. Sometimes it shows up slowly like a sunrise after a very long night. So if you're holding on to something someone stole, your voice, your value, your story, don't let bitterness win. Let truth be your patience. Let time do the talking. And when the moment comes, speak. Speak so loudly the silence can't hold you anymore. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of something you've lived through or someone you've had to become, please like, comment, and share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe, because more powerful stories like this are coming soon. Until next time, remember, the truth doesn't age. It waits. And when it's ready, it reclaims everything. That night, I pulled every document I had, financials, land deeds, past court filings, and something else, an old recording I found buried in my voicemail archive. My father, weak but clear. I want Clara to have the land. I trust her. She won't waste it. I'd saved it. just in case. Now, the case had arrived. I contacted a colleague who owed me a favor. We began drafting a petition to contest the estate under constructive trust law, an obscure clause most lawyers ignore. Unless they're very, very motivated. I still am. The day Sandra robbed me, she thought I'd fade into nothing, that I'd disappear like the ashes of that will she burned. But ashes, when buried deep, can become fuel. Emily doesn't know what's coming. Sandra? She's too far gone to stop it. But me, I'm just getting started. Because when a legacy is built on lies, it only takes one truth to bring it crashing down. You know that moment? Just before a thunderstorm breaks? The air turns heavy, still, like the sky itself is holding its breath. That's exactly what it felt like the day I got the news. Sandra had collapsed. A stroke. Complications. She was still alive, but barely. In and out of consciousness. The woman who once moved the world with a single glare now couldn't move her fingers. And just like that, the storm I'd been preparing for was here. I didn't celebrate. No champagne, no dance in the kitchen, only silence and strategy. You see, most people wait for opportunity to knock. But I'd been building a back door for 20 years. And now I was about to walk through it. A week after her collapse, I got a text. Emily. Hi, Clara. I think I need to see you. Everything's falling apart. We met at a small bench near the botanical gardens. She looked tired, like someone carrying too much for too long. Her makeup was smudged, her voice was trembling. Mom didn't name me as her beneficiary, she whispered. Everything's still in her name. The will was never finalized, and now the lawyers are circling like vultures. I don't even know where the documents are. She never trusted me with anything. I listened. I nodded, and I said the one thing I had been holding on to for 2 decades. That's because she was never planning to leave you anything. Her eyes widened. What? I pulled out an envelope. Not the original will, Sandra burned that. But records, paper trails, emails, an old voicemail from our father, enough to paint a picture and start unraveling Sandra's empire. Your mother stole everything from me, I told her, and now she's trying to do the same to you. The difference is, you have me, and I'm not afraid anymore. Emily sat frozen. At first, she didn't believe me, but then she asked to hear the voicemail. My father's voice, faint, sick, but unmistakably clear, played through the speaker. Clara gets the land. She understands legacy. She won't waste it. And just like that, the illusion Sandra had built began to crack, right in her daughter's hands. The next day, I filed my motion, a petition to claim constructive trust over Sandra's entire estate, based on fraud, undue influence, and concealment. It wasn't just a legal filing, it was a declaration of war. Within 48 hours, I received a call from Sandra's legal team. Her health had stabilized just enough for a brief meeting. She requested me. Just me. Against every instinct in my body, I went. She was in a high-end private facility, sterile, expensive, quiet. I walked into the room expecting to see the powerful woman who once controlled my life with a single smirk. But what I saw instead was a ghost. She was pale, half her face drooping, eyes flickering like candlelight in a storm, yet even now, even like this, she forced a weak smile. So, she rasped, you finally came for what I took. I didn't reply. I always knew, she continued, that you were the only one stubborn enough to wait this long. But you should have stayed gone. It was cleaner that way. I stepped closer. You built your life on a lie, Sandra. I'm just here to sweep up the ashes. She chuckled, dry and cracked. You think this is justice? It's vengeance, and it's going to cost you more than you know. I leaned in. You're wrong, I whispered. It already cost me everything. And I'm still standing. I left the hospital with more than just a moral victory. I left knowing she knew this was the end of her control. But the real move? That came next. I subpoenaed Sandra's business records, trust agreements, and property deeds. Turns out not only had she never transferred anything legally to Emily, she'd also been shifting assets offshore. Illegally. Fraud. Tax evasion. Concealment of inheritance. All of it documented. And here's where fate twisted the knife one more time. The same judge presiding over my motion was once a young attorney I had mentored in my pro bono work. She knew my history, my reputation, my restraint. And she knew when someone was lying. The first hearing was set for next week. Everything I'd prepared for would come down to this: one room, one ruling, one truth dragged into the light after 20 years in the dark. Emily, now fully on my side, stood ready to testify. against her own mother. She had discovered even more documents her mother had hidden in false bottom drawers, in locked boxes labeled charity papers. Papers proving Sandra had rewritten the new will to leave everything to a fake nonprofit she controlled. Sandra had planned to disinherit not just me, but her own daughter. Her final trick, her final betrayal, and yet I couldn't stop thinking. After all this, after all the evidence, the witnesses, the filings, would I feel peace? Or just empty victory? I stood outside the courtroom the night before the hearing. I looked up at the courthouse, an old building with cracked steps and weathered columns, and I realized tomorrow wouldn't be the end, it would be the beginning. The beginning of truth, of legacy reclaimed, of family rebuilt. But just when I thought I had seen all of Sandra's tricks, Emily called, breathless, shaking. "Clara, you need to come now. They're saying Mom just signed a new will." From her hospital bed, witnessed, notarized, everything. My heart dropped. What? She's trying to change everything again. She's leaving it all to someone named Marcus. Who the hell is Marcus? I asked. Silence. Then Emily whispered, her nurse. I didn't believe it at first, not because it was impossible, but because it was so perfectly her. Even on the edge of death, Sandra still reached for control. Still plotting, still playing the game. But this time, I was ready. I drove straight to the hospital. Walked through the sterile halls where life and death traded whispers. Emily was waiting outside her mother's room, pale, trembling, eyes wide like someone who had just seen behind the curtain. "He's in there," she said. "Marcus. He won't let me talk to her alone. Said everything has to go through him now." I didn't know who this Marcus was or how long he'd been planning his entrance. But I knew one thing. Sandra had found someone just like herself. A manipulator. A scavenger waiting for the queen to fall so he could steal the crown. I walked into the room and there he was. Marcus. Tall. Clean-shaven. Perfect posture. He wore his scrubs like a tailored suit, like he wanted you to know he was important. His eyes scanned me like a threat assessment. "She's resting," he said. I stepped closer to the bed. Sandra's eyes fluttered open. She was weak, so weak, but her lips curled into something that almost looked like satisfaction. "You came," she whispered. "I did," she chuckled then coughed. "Too late, again. We'll see about that." I turned to Marcus. "You think you're gonna walk out of here with a fortune. But what you don't know is, I've already built the net." He raised a brow. "She signed it, witnessed, notarized. It's legal." I smiled. "Good. That means I get to destroy it. Legally." That night, I filed an emergency injunction to freeze all transactions related to Sandra's estate. Why? Because Sandra's mental state at the time of the signature was now questionable. Her own doctors had confirmed she was fading in and out of lucidity. Signing a new will under those conditions? Legally risky at best, fraudulent at worst. I had hospital records, medical affidavits, a paper trail of Marcus's sudden transfers and withdrawals. But the most damning evidence? Security footage. A nurse, an actual nurse, who Marcus had bullied, came forward. She'd seen him bring in a witness who didn't even work for the hospital. And the notary? Let's just say, his license had expired 2 years ago. Game over. The court hearing came faster than expected. Sandra couldn't attend, of course, she was barely alive. Emily sat beside me, her hand shaking in mine. I stood before the judge and laid everything out. The original betrayal, the burned will, the decades I spent building a life not out of spite, but out of survival. And then I told them about Marcus, about the forged will, about Sandra's obsession with control, right up to her final breath. When I finished, there was silence. The judge, a woman with eyes that had seen far too many family wars, leaned forward and asked just one question. "What do you want, Clara?" I didn't even hesitate. Justice. Not revenge, just the truth, written back into history. 2 weeks later, the court ruled in my favor. The will was declared invalid. Marcus disappeared, facing fraud charges, and Sandra's entire estate, properties, accounts, the business she inherited with lies was transferred to me. I had done it. After 20 years of silence, I'd finally won. And yet, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt free. I walked through the halls of the house I grew up in, every floorboard whispering memories. My father's study where the truth was once burned. My childhood room, still painted the color I picked at 11. I didn't come back to reclaim a house. I came to reclaim a story. And now, I could rewrite it. I didn't keep the money. I donated the business to the town, created scholarships in my father's name for girls from broken families. And the house? I gave it to Emily. She was innocent in all of this. And in the end, she stood by the truth. I told her, let this place be filled with laughter again. Real laughter, not the kind that covers lies. She cried when I handed her the keys, not because of what she gained, but because of what we'd both survived. Sandra died 3 weeks later. No grand funeral, no legacy she controlled. Just silence. Fitting for a woman who spent her life silencing others. And me? I still walk by that old field sometimes where our father once taught us how to plant tomatoes. The land feels different now. Not because it's mine again, but because the truth finally lives here. Sometimes, justice isn't loud. It doesn't always arrive with fireworks or headlines. Sometimes it shows up slowly like a sunrise after a very long night. So if you're holding on to something someone stole, your voice, your value, your story, don't let bitterness win. Let truth be your patience. Let time do the talking. And when the moment comes, speak. Speak so loudly the silence can't hold you anymore. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of something you've lived through or someone you've had to become, please like, comment, and share your thoughts below. And don't forget to subscribe, because more powerful stories like this are coming soon. Until next time, remember, the truth doesn't age. It waits. And when it's ready, it reclaims everything.